Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 411th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have Mr. Jack Siney. Cool dude I mentioned in the last episode. He is the founder of a couple of cool businesses that scour the internet and lay deals at your feet for selling to the government. We get into why I have been hesitant to go after them, and he addresses all of my objections. And so this is something you need to listen to. It is literally money sitting at your feet. You can avoid the lengthy RFP, RFQ, RFI, all the games. He gives some interesting statistics as well about how many deals are done with the government, like same week, if not the same day. It was staggering. It was a lot of new info that I did not realize. So you're in for a treat with that. You also mentioned last week about my IPA. It's not the beer. Get your mind out of the gutter. But if you send me some beer, I'll probably answer your call. But hey, the IPA is my initial process assessment. It is a super affordable deep dive with me going through your business. All right. You share numbers that you want to share with me, website, sales, conversion statistics, you name it. And I help you tighten things up. It is the only thing I offer that is not a lengthy engagement starting at 90 days and several thousands of dollars. So if you want to pick my brain, if you want to get my opinion, you want me to look at things and give you an idea on how to move forward aggressively and profitably, check that out, thesaleswhisper.com/IPA. All right. And as always, we've got the 30-day sales growth. Come hang out. Again, no contract, month to month. Come get 50 plus videos, workbooks, Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, boilerplate. The contracts alone that you'd get that you can use for proposals and for locking down deals, you would pay attorneys a lot of money to create that. You could join for a year and still recoup, have a positive ROI just from those. So come join us, 30daysalesgrowth.com. We're on live every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific for the private group members. So, hey, let's end 2019 strong, start 2020 together in the 30daysalesgrowth.com. All right, now let's bring on our guest. Jack Siney, all the way from Southern Florida. You can't golf, so I'm really wondering if you have anything to offer to salespeople. But we're about to find out, man. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Thanks so much. Nice to talk to you, Wes. How are you doing?
So you can't golf or you don't want to golf? We got to get that right out in the open right now.
I would say I'm an average athlete at most things, and I think golf goes on about 6 holes too long in my book. You get to about 12, 13, I'm like, I'm good.
You know what? That's a damn good point, because the only time I golf now is literally in charity tournaments, and like maybe 2 a year. And usually one I'm invited to and one I'll pay for. And I just played one, I don't know, 6 weeks ago maybe, and it's a great tournament. But they admit they oversell it because it's for a great cause, and they're like, it's going to be a long day, and it's a horrendously long day.
Or if you can get away with best ball, you know what I mean? Best ball also will do. So.
It is best ball, but I'm like, why don't we just do 12 holes?
Yeah.
Why don't we do 9 holes, right? Because there's only a few jerks that like want to, they're purists. I'm gonna get 18 holes in, and they're out there to win, right? Yeah. Like everybody, I'm there to drink, give them some money, right?
Well, type A's, we're hyper competitive, right? So we move from like simply sports when we were younger. That's the one sport that and bowling we can do as we get older,
Yeah. I'm like, man, so the next time I put a tournament together, it's going to be a 12-hole tournament.
Let me know. I'm there. Won't throw up my back, whatever you need.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're drinking anyway. It's like, but yeah, by 12 hole, you're like, dude, I am done. Let's go.
Yeah, so, I totally agree.
Oh, well, I digress, man. So what the heck's going on? GovSpend.com. I don't sell to the government. I got out of the government as quick as I could, man. Why the heck do I want to talk about the government? Maybe it's the like trillions of dollars maybe that they have.
Amen. Yeah, I would say most folks, they hear about it and sometimes they feel like it's too complex and I don't want to get into it, but the government's spending $7 trillion a year is a ton of money. We always talk about that's the biggest prospect in the world by far. And so folks and companies, if you get a government deal or two, will literally can change the course of a business. And the folks inside the Beltway, typically in D.C., they talk about 60, 100, $200 million contracts like nothing. And, for most companies, that could be 2 or 3 years worth of revenue. So it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity. Amazing.
Right. And yeah, I've just recently started looking into this. So it was good timing when Christina reached out. Because I'm thinking it's like, I do sales training, I do marketing, but I went to the Air Force Academy, spent 5 years on active duty. I understand what's going on in the military. I can talk about leadership and communication and things like that. And I guess people don't really realize that there's probably every type of business somehow is touched by the government, and there's probably a way to get your foot in the door, huh?
Oh, yeah. Two things. The government buys everything, right? If it's made, the government buys it. So there's a market for every single product. And I think your experience is the norm, right? If you go to any sales conference, some of these big weekend conferences that some of these folks put on, there's rarely a government track, or there's rarely any conversation about the government market. Folks are somewhat intimidated or feel like, again, it's not worth their while. And this huge, huge, huge niche that's ignored by most of the sales world. It's amazing. It's very, very challenging to find a lot of specific information about selling to the government, which is, one of the reasons we've exploded so much the last several years. So
right. And this is this the second business you've started?
It's my third business, my second good one, right? And so, amen. I was
all right. Stop right there. What was the bad one? We got to know.
Well, I had, in the dot-com era, I had a travel company out in San Francisco, and it went down when the market went down. So I think most folks my age have that experience with the dot-com. And so that's where I started in the travel industry with my first true startup, venture funded. And, it went down again when the market went down. So
you were doing that, in the late 90s?
Late 90s, yeah. Moved out to San Francisco, and it was amazing. Like I said, at that time I was 30-some years old, and, folks my age were doing things we should have been able to do. Like the meetings we had, the folks we got to meet. It was amazing because during that time, right, all of the kind of the talking heads, all the established business folks, they didn't know what this thing, the internet was, right? And they were looking for some of the younger folks to tell them what was up. And so I was just at places I shouldn't have been at that age, but it was amazing. It was amazing experience. That business did not make it, but it was a great learning experience. So
yeah, I know. I got in at the tail end. I was selling technology. I was selling test and measurement equipment. Companies like yours were my client.
Okay.
I remember being in Austin. So I was brand new, but I'd lived in Austin for years. And this woman, I think she actually flew out from the Bay Area. She flies out to Austin. A systems engineer flies out from like New York or somewhere. And I'm there in Austin. And I'm like, we're calling a startup. This is the summer of 2000. So it's hot. Texas, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston. It's like, It's 1 degree from hell, man, for like 90 days, right? It's just brutal. And this gal says, yeah, we're going to show up in suits. And I'm like, this is a startup in Austin in the summer.
Keep it weird, Austin. Keep it weird.
I'm like, do we really want to do that? And she's like, we're dressing up. And I'm like, I salute like the good soldier I was. And, said, all right. And this guy opens the door. He's like the COO, CFO. He was older than that because I was 31, 30, 31. And, this guy's 55 probably, right? The whole VC back. He was like the mature one of the group.
Yeah. And
he opens this empty office because they were expanding, and all they had was a ping pong table and a conference table. And he's in Bermuda shorts and flip flops.
That was about the norm back in the day. Yeah.
And the first thing out of his mouth is, "Whoa, y'all dressed up." I'm like, but oh well. I digress yet again.
There you go.
Crazy times. So, all right, that's got to be a punch in the gut, though, huh? That's a big move.
It was, yeah.
You moved from Florida?
Yes, so my wife is from Florida, so we were out in the Bay Area. She said, I'd love to go back to the East Coast. I grew up in Maryland, so I was a big fan of the East Coast as well. So we made our way back to Florida, and that's where I started my second opportunity, which was a software company. We actually sold to police departments. So we put software on the laptops that are very common now in the police vehicles, and did that for about 10 years. That company was acquired, and that led into this current company of GovSpend. As we were selling to the government, we really saw some of the opportunities in that market. So that was kind of the progression of how we got here today.
Okay. I'm always interested in how someone starts. What was the division of labor, right? How, are y'all just hanging out? Like, hey, let's start a business. I'll throw in 50 grand. You throw in 50 grand. How does that start, like at the very beginning?
Yeah, I think early on, everybody, it's very much bootstrapped. All the stereotypical stories you hear, right? Everybody's kind of just getting by month to month and making it happen. And for us, there was some credit card, there was some personal financing, that kind of thing. And then skill set, the guy that I found this company with, we work great. We've worked together. This is our second company together. And our division of labor is great because he's more technical, very organized, super smart, runs our tech team. He's actually our CEO, very organized. And I'm more the people person on the sales side, kind of from an HR standpoint. So our skill sets are very, very synergistic. And so it's a great mix. We've had 2 successful runs at it. So our relationship has been great. It's been super, super productive. So
what did you do to the other business? Did you sell that, or is that still going?
Yeah, the second business is still going. We sold it to a company out in California, actually. And so it's still running and been great in that they're still providing services to the public safety market.
How did you know it was time to sell?
It was interesting. So we were out actually raising a round of funding, really not looking. It was our series, I think, C round of funding at that point. And this big conglomerate came in and made us an offer for the whole company. And it's one of those things where, you step back for a little bit, kind of analyze the pros and cons of that, and eventually wound up accepting that offer. And then once we were acquired, I wound up staying for another 4 or 5 years. So it was a great, it was nice because they bought us. Really nothing changed the next day, but we had great benefits, right? We went from a small company with horrible benefits to this big company with benefits. They kind of let us do our own thing because, as you know, a lot of times when a company is acquired or you have a merger, sometimes it doesn't always go smoothly. And so the way they handled it was phenomenal. I loved working there, and it was great. And then one other thing I just want to go back on, I love being an entrepreneur. It's been my life for the last 30 years. And one thing I would say to folks listening is that in the entrepreneur world, there's this thing where you mentioned, how do you start? Everyone has this thing where I gotta jump off the cliff. I gotta leave my job. I gotta take all this risk. And I would just say there really is, particularly in today's internet age, there is a way to do it progressively where you can set up, kind of your side hustle, right? And work on that so that when it's your time to go full time and you want to go all into your entrepreneurial venture, it doesn't have to be so hit or miss, right? Back in the day, it was like jump off a cliff and it didn't work, you're bankrupt, and your credit cards are maxed. And I think with today's technology and the mobile workforce, there's a lot of ways to be entrepreneurial where you can then go be a full-time entrepreneur and not have to kind of jump off that cliff. And so I'd love to encourage folks, when you have that inkling, there's a way to do it kind of after hours or on the weekends, so it's not such a sudden, life-changing event. So just want to encourage folks. That's certainly been my experience. So
yeah. Yeah, that was mine too. So tell us about the government. I mean, I've stayed away from it, because I kind of misunderstood what a salesperson could do for the government. But also I was and still am a little turned off by my impression that it could take forever to land a contract, right? I don't want to respond to a 90-page RFP, RFI, RFQ, blah, 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 do this song and dance for 2 years, then have funding cut. And then, I just wasted, 100 hours of my time. It's like, if I do a deal, I gotta make money on 90% of the things I touch, right? Yep. Otherwise it's like no bueno.
Sure.
So am I correct in that, or is there a secret to winning deals so I don't have to spend so much time and can increase my chances of winning?
Sure. So how about level? So let's level set what the government market is, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the ways that you don't have to go through such a painful process, right? Some of that is still present, but today there's really a lot of options. So the government on average spending right now about $7 trillion a year, ton of money, spending about $4.1 trillion. State and local, about 90,000 agencies spending about $3.25 trillion. Cool. So those
are I'm trying to take notes here. So give me those again, because I was thinking you just had that one, but so there's 3 levels you're talking here.
Federal, state, and local, definitely. And in the local or state, we have education. Some people call it SLED, right? State, local education. But federal, definitely. So the federal, inside the Beltway, driven out of DC. There's about 500 federal agencies. They employ about 2 million folks, spending currently just over $4 trillion a year. Ton of money, right? Ton of
grief.
And then on the state, local side, there's about 90,000 agencies, okay? About 2 million employees, spending about $3.25 trillion. So almost equal, but again, a lot more agencies. And I would just say someone starting, which we'll get to, you'd probably start in the state and local world because it's much more accessible for a variety of reasons. That's the landscape of your government prospect, your government opportunities, right? Again, a ton of money.
Good grief. $3.25 trillion in the state and local. Good grief.
So let's walk through the process, right? So no doubt the process that folks are so familiar with, they talk about all the time, this bid and RFP, takes 6 to 9 months or longer, horrible, I don't make any money, blah, blah, blah. Does that happen? It totally does. Here's the stat, ready? It's going to blow your mind. Not my stat. We got into this market, all these bid and RFP companies, their stat, ready? Here we go. 80% of government spending doesn't go through the bid and RFP process. Now just let that sit for a minute, right? That thing that we hear about all the time, 80% of government spending doesn't go through that. The government doesn't want to do it. It's very lengthy. They don't always get the best vendor. They don't get the product they want. Certainly the companies don't want to do it. It's long, laborious. It's not very profitable. It's a challenge all the way around. And so it's amazing how far away we've really gotten from that bid and RFP process over the years. So then it's like, well, okay, well then where is that 80%? So let's just talk about that, because that's where we dig in. And so for folks like yourself or the folks listening, there's a huge market out there. Believe it or not, government actually spends money in a couple days. Now, people are going to fall out of their chair. Or if you're in your car, don't swerve and hit something. But literally, you can win a government contract in 2 or 3 days. That sounds crazy, but it happens. So let's go through it. There's really 9 ways the government has developed to buy that don't go through the bid and RFP system. So let's go through them. There's sole source, right? There's piggyback. We'll come back through them. Discretionary spend, P card, which is just a credit card, set asides, simplified quotes, GSA schedule, state schedule, and co-ops. So there's 9 ways the government will buy that doesn't involve the bid and RFP, and they literally can buy within 24 hours, 48 hours, or a couple weeks. It's an amazing process that they developed, and so all of those are available to companies. So that stereotype you always hear about, it takes so long, and all those things, there are numerous ways now the government's buying to provide access to companies like yours, or again, the government buys anything. So who's ever listening, whatever you sell, the government definitely buys it, 100%.
Okay, man. All right. And I guess that's what you help people figure out, huh?
Yeah, so our goal with GovSpend, really without having this be a sales pitch, we went around and we saw the process. Hey, how do you find out where is the government spending their money? So what we did is we went out and gather purchase orders from all the government agencies. So we go to government agency to government agency. We say, hey, we want all your purchase orders back from 2010 forward. So we have this online database. It works just like Google. You go into it, there's a search screen. You say, hey, you sell iPad, right? You type in iPad. Literally, you'll see every government agency that buys an iPad, who they bought it from, and what they paid. It's sick. It's amazing. It's a crazy.
And I guess through the Freedom of Information Act, they have to give you that info.
We will. So each state's a little different. The federal government is definitely the Freedom of Information Act, and each state kind of has different provisions about how you collect the data. But at some point, besides black programs, which are top secret spending programs,
sure,
the government has to share kind of where they're spending our taxpayer dollars. So that's the mechanism we'll use to go get the data.
So people then just subscribe to you, just like they would subscribe to Info USA or something for data?
They could, yes. So it's software as a service, right? So if someone wants to provide access to the data, they'll buy a subscription, and they'll literally can go into the database and see, again, whatever you sell widgets. Here's all the government agencies buying widgets. Here's who they're buying from. Here's what they're paying. If you wanted to go in and say, listen, this one competitor really eats at me, and you want to go look at every agency they're working with, you can go do that. If you sell through a channel, you can see all your channel partners, and are they being loyal to you? Are they selling your competitor's product? I mean, there's about 20 to 25 different ways to slice and dice the data, but it is literally earth-shattering, because today, we all know, like in sales, right? In sales, we use information that we hear about, we see on the internet, something I heard at the show, right? If you're a sales rep, I always say, wherever you are, do you drive in South Florida? Do you drive north to Orlando today, or do I drive south to Miami, right? And sales reps, we do this thing where, like, I use my gut feel. I like the person in Orlando. I'm going to go up there. However, if you find out Orlando's been using the same vendor for 7 straight years, the chances you're going to unseat them, very small. However, down in Miami, they buy your product, but they use a different vendor every 2 years. You have a much better shot at that Miami deal, right? Mm-hmm. But without that kind of information, without knowing behind the scenes, folks guess, and they just spend time and money and energy in places that typically are not efficient. So our whole goal is to say, don't go after all 90,000 agencies selling. Let's show you the top 700, 2,000, 3,000 agencies that are buying your product, and you focus on those. That's where you will have success.
Yeah, I haven't even, some of those I've heard of, but not discretionary, or not piggyback, and not, I don't think I even understand. I couldn't describe set-asides. I mean, I
Sure.
kind of remember it from back in the day. But yeah, that makes sense. So you'd recommend starting with the state and local level.
Yeah, for anybody doing it, we have a couple things we recommend. We can jump into those. But if you have a product, sometimes you have a niche product that only the federal government's buying, right? Some part on some plane or some, you machine some part, which is fair. But for most folks probably listening to this podcast, the best place for them to start is some local or state agency because they're more accessible. You can, sure you'll get paid. You can actually interact with your client, your end consumer. That may not happen with the federal government, right? You may ship a product to some military base or some agency. You may never see that person, right? And you certainly can't call somebody and be like, hey, I'd like my check, right? Obviously, the federal government is much more red tape to make that happen. So we always encourage folks, if they're going to start at the state and local level, just much more accessibility.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I mean, you can establish a relationship as well, a little easier versus having to get on a plane to try to go meet somebody.
And then from our end, when we work with a client, we have this thing we call the flagship formula. So there's really a 3-step process that we suggest to folks. So it goes like this. So my biggest thing, if you're going to sell to the government, is go get a flagship agency. Go get an agency that loves what you do. Whether you sell pencils, you sell iPads, you sell computers, you sell office desk chairs. Find an agency that needs your product and make them a raving fan. Right? Even if you have to give the product away, go find an agency, make them your flagship, because what happens when you establish an agency that loves you, other government agencies want to hear it from another government agency. I don't care how good you are at sales. I don't care a great communicator you are. It really doesn't matter much. What government agencies want to hear, they're somewhat risk averse. They want to hear from another government agency. They love your product. They love what it does. They love how it works. You're a great company. Go get a flagship agency. Make them love you. Whatever you have to do, go above and beyond. Next, go get media around that. So the government loves to have themselves in the paper. Typically, as you know, we all know, the government typically takes a lot of black eyes, right? Most of it's negative. You work for the government, you get rained upon, and it's all negative. They love getting positive press. Hey, we just installed this new piece of software. We're going to save 3% in our budget. Hey, we just installed these ergonomic chairs to save our employees some HR benefits. Whatever it is, they love to be in the paper. And the newspapers and the news outlets are looking for stories. So it's an easy connection. You call, once you deploy at your flagship agency, call the local newspaper, call the local folks and say, listen, so-and-so agency just deployed our thing. They're super happy. They love it. Typically, there's a government reporter. They love doing the story. What happens, that story gets put in the paper, and again, as a validation piece, as soon as your product, a story about you is in the local paper, you're official. No matter what you say, you're on the cover of the Dallas Morning News. All the agencies in Dallas now feel like it's safe to work with you because the newspaper has said you're good. So go get a flagship agency, get some media around it, and then it's selling in concentric circles around that agency. Because again, they all want to hear about it. The government's kind of a Me Too type of thing. So once that agency has, go 20 miles around that agency, go talk to the agencies and say, hey, did you know so-and-so agency has our product? They love it. Did you see the newspaper article about us? It's amazing. And so the government really is a Me Too. Once it works great, that's how you'll build your base. Establish a flagship, go get some media, and then sell in circles around that agency. That model 100% works every single time. Been doing that for 20 plus years.
Very nice. Now you got me curious, man. All the taxes I pay in California, I need to get some of that.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's tough out west. Hey, real quick, let me just go back to piggyback. You mentioned it just so folks, we don't leave them hanging. So what piggyback is really quick. Let's say someone just went through the bid and RFP process, right? They went through the whole horrible 6 to 9 months. You put in your proposal. You went through it. You were chosen the winner. You won it, and it's all good. So you're like, thank goodness we got a deal. What's really nice about that deal, almost every agency in the country will allow folks to piggyback off that deal. So in other words, if you're at agency A and they just bought 100 iPads, right? They went through the whole 6-month process. They chose a vendor. They got a good price. Typically, agency B that's 30 miles away, or believe it or not, in another state, or sometimes across the country. I've had agencies in California buy off a contract in Florida, believe it or not. They'll allow you to piggyback off that procurement because the rationale being another agency just went through the whole process. They did it well. We analyzed it. They had a bunch of proposals. They analyzed it well. They chose a good vendor. Price is good. If we do it, we're going to wind up with the same result. So let's just piggyback off that contract. Let's add our 50 on top of their 100. Let's add our quantity on top of it. Does that make sense? So that's what the piggyback process is.
So would that be the Florida branch of a federal agency piggybacking, or could the IT department of my county, Riverside County here, could your county in Florida piggyback off
Either way. Anyway, so every agency is a little different what they allow. The two issues with piggybacking will be how long ago did it happen, right? And it's variable. Every agency feels like if it happened 2 weeks ago, can you piggyback? Maybe. A month ago, maybe. 6 months ago, I'm not sure. Every agency. So how long ago it happened is one variable. And then secondly, how far away is it? Right? Sometimes same county, definitely, same state normally, 2 states away, not sure, across the country, maybe, right? But again, it's left up to the discretion of the person who runs the procurement department. So you mentioned it could be a local agency piggybacking off federal, a federal off a local. So there's really no limits per se, but it's imagine whoever runs the procurement department, they kind of make the call for their agency. They're very much empowered to kind of figure out what's reasonable for our agency. Does that make sense?
So how could I initiate that piggyback, snowball effect?
Yeah. Are you as a company, you mean, as the company or the agency?
Yeah. Well, let's say I get my local county here to hire me as a speaker on leadership, right? They're having
totally do that. Yep.
Yeah, they're having a one-day offsite, and they're bringing in some speakers, on morale and leadership and blah, blah, blah. And so I get all these raving reviews, and I get us written up in the Press Enterprise here in our local paper, and, Riverside County showing great foresight and leadership and blah, 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 and what have you. So would I push that out? Do I go get 100 copies and mail it like to surrounding counties,
Yeah, Tilly, here's what happens. So when you're selling to the government, it's like selling to anybody else, right? What GovSpend will do is help you focus on so many agencies. You can't go over to 90,000 agencies. And honestly, you may not want to go to your local town hall, city hall, because they may have hired another leadership speaker and you don't even know, right? So we help you find where do you have the most likelihood to sell. That's one. But once you won an RFP, the way you'll piggyback is traditional sales stuff. When you go, whatever your sales you're doing today, whether it's online or in person or over the phone, the last piece, there's always like, hey, how are we going to buy, right? Because here's the thing, the government, again, doesn't want to put out a bid in RFP. It's long for them. So if they love you and they want you to come in and
what do you mean if they love me? What?
Amen.
Go back. Okay, rewind. Delete that part. Okay.
Once you convince them to love you, right? Or once they found out about
convince them, it's obvious. Oh, we got to rewind again. Okay.
Amen. Once they love you, right? Typically then they'll say, hey, listen, they'll typically tick off that list and be like, hey, have you won a bid in RFP that we could piggyback on? Is there anything you do that's sole source, right? There's kind of this wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, do you have a way that we could make it happen, right? Are you on state schedule? Are you on a GSA schedule? Are you in any co-op? So it's this back and forth. Once they decide they're going to buy, they want to find a way to do that in a more efficient way. And so you would bring up the piggyback so easy. And then they'll decide, like literally I mentioned earlier, I had an agency in California, travel the country, selling to the government, buy off a contract we had in Miami. I said, listen, we just won a bid in RFP in Miami, the exact same product you're about to do. Now, I know that's 3,000 miles away. Could you piggyback off it? The lady was like, I'm not sure. Let me check. Send me all the stuff. So we sent them all the information of the summary of the bid. They loved it. They were like, it's super thorough. I'll write it up. And it's funny, I always say to our folks, this is the only time when you work with the vendors or you work for the government, you still write term papers. So typically the government will write a little term paper. They'll be like, here's what happened. We really love it. They'll send it to the city council or the mayor and say, we'd love to piggyback off that deal in Miami. Can we do it? And in that case, they allowed them to do it. So it's amazing. So you will really follow your normal sales process and kind of reference that at the end to help avoid the 6 to 9 month bid RFP, again, which everyone gets annoyed by.
So you mentioned, GSA schedules. Same thing. I have a little bit of experience, but a lot of maybe just unwarranted fear. But I've been approached by people in the past to charge me a whole lot of money to get me on a GSA schedule, or I can piggyback on theirs. I mean, how easy or hard is that?
Yeah. So from my end, again, as we talk to folks trying to break into the government market, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the GSA schedule. There is a time and a place, right? I feel like that's like almost phase 2 or phase 3. As you mentioned, there's a bunch of companies out there that'll help you get on GSA schedule, right? Because it takes some time. You get all these reporting mechanisms. They'll come audit your business, those kind of things, make sure everything's good. And for folks that don't know, once you're on GSA schedule, a government agency can go out and buy your product almost like an e-commerce transaction. They can go right out, You're listed on a schedule, literally looks like an Excel spreadsheet. They find Wes's leadership or Wes's sales consulting, and they'll buy it just like that. So it's available, but it does take some time and effort. And one of the challenges, if you are on GSA, you have to maintain that price for as long as the schedule's in place. So if you offer somebody else a lower price, you literally have to go back and give everyone else a rebate typically on the price that you offered. So I'm not a fan of telling folks to start on the GSA schedule. There's a plethora of other ways to get your foot in the door. And so I would recommend that kind of as phase 2 or phase 3 once you have a good kind of base of government customer clients. Does that make sense?
I mean, is there anything that wouldn't work? I mean, I like to pick my friend that's a chiropractor as my example.
Sure.
Because it's like, all right, if it can work for him, then it can probably work for anybody.
Sure.
Right? Because I like to be kind of the devil's advocate. And so I'm like, okay, this has got to be it. There's no way the government is hiring a chiropractor to treat their people. But I'm probably wrong, huh?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we have this database. The government buys everything. So we'll run whiskey to condoms to chiropractor services, and the government buys everything. I'm not kidding. Literally, the government, they'll buy dog poop bags. They buy, you name it. If it's made, the government buys it, And so they literally go through, and the process is the same. The government is, you imagine little towns, or you imagine some of the VA services, they need all those things. The government is like a small city. I mean, literally, or a large city in some cases.
The government's like a big 87-head monster, so it's more than a city.
Right. If it's made, somebody somewhere in the government is buying it. I promise you. It really is amazing. And so, again, all those opportunities are out there. Whoever, in your listening audience, literally whatever you make, the government is buying it. And one of the things we'll talk about at the end, if you're not sure, you ping us and we'll serve it up to you for free. We'll give you the top 50 agencies that are buying whatever you sell. And so we'll affirm that for you. So I don't want anyone to take some risk they're not peaceful with.
So how is your company structured now? Is it a physical location? Do you have virtual assistants? I mean, how have you grown?
Yeah, so we're located in South Florida. We are, I would say, more of a normal, small, mid-sized company. We have a little over 200 folks. Our sales process, we reach out to, as cool as what we do is, I believe, humbly, and I know the folks listening, we're talking about government sales, so hopefully they're still awake and it's not necessarily the most exciting topic all the time.
Dude, I am fine. If somebody's sleeping on this,
ton of money. Listen,
they're not seeing the light here.
Yeah, so, we have about 200 folks. We do everything really with inside sales team. So we reach out to folks, introduce this thing. One of the nice parts about our business model wasn't the intent when we started. I have purchase orders for all the companies. So everybody I'm calling, everybody we're calling, I know they're already selling to the government because I collect the purchase orders. So I can call ABC Plumbing and say, hey, I see you're selling to the city of San Francisco. I see you're selling to the city of Los Angeles. Would you like to increase your government business? Right? So it's very, it's very in their mix. And like, well, how the hell do you know that? Right? And so then we just kind of take it from there. And so we'll use Zoom or WebEx or whatever. We'll do a screen share. We'll show them our platform live. It's again super, super, super unique. And typically that's how it works. So we're like I think most companies that are probably listening to this podcast structure, we're not remote. All of our folks really are in our office here in South Florida, and we have a sales team, a tech team, a marketing team, you name it, kind of a typical organizational structure.
Right. What have been your challenges in just growing your own company?
That's really fair. So I think most folks today with the current employment situation, I think hiring people and keeping them and keeping them motivated. And I think one of the things we like to talk about is our culture. I know some of the podcasts I've listened to viewers, it's folks will talk about, hey, how do I keep people? How do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them excited? And so one of the things we really try to do is be really open and direct with our folks, and both developmentally, right? We'll bring them in as a typical kind of SDR model, and then we'll graduate them to an AE, and then they'll take over kind of a team lead role. So we give them a very clean career path, and then we try to have a really open culture, which on the sales side, honestly, is easier, right? Because we have some objective metrics, how many calls are you making, how many demos do you have, what are your sales numbers? So it's easier, but being really open with your folks and sharing about where they stand and where they want to be and what's important, because some folks, we all know this, right? Sales 101, some folks are motivated by money and they're all in, they're 12 hours a day and they're running frenetic and they're running around with their head cut off, and you have other folks that do a great job, but they need a work-life balance. So they want to come in a little later. They have to leave a little early to pick up their kids. That's cool. Some folks are great at making calls. We all know this. And some folks are better closers. And so the more you're able to kind of relate, so we work in a unique structure here. We work in a team structure. So if you find a team where you have a great person who loves to call people, a person that's great at demoing, and a person that's great at closing, that team will crush, right? Because we all think as sales reps we're good at everything, and that's just not the case. And I think we all know that. But sometimes we got to be honest with ourselves.
So are you, would you call your hiring hire slow, fire fast? Is that still a valid, even this tight job market?
My partner loves that term. I think we're good at saying it. I'm not sure how great we are at executing against it, but I think it's really, again, for me as the people person of this operation, I think folks really appreciate directness and honesty. I really do, and I think that's really lacking in a lot of what we see in society and kind of what the world tells us to chase. And I think folks love companies that are authentic and super honest, and I think that's really what we strive to do, is just be, hey, here's who we are. We have a CRM that exposes our whole company. Everyone knows who's doing well, who's not, where we are. And I think sharing that and being really open corporately is a huge, huge value add. And I think folks love that as much as, you hear in sales, the money and the recognition. I think those are important, but young folks today, I think I listened to one of your podcasts where they changed jobs 12 times or something, in the course of their career today, I think is the stat. And so if you're able to engage, this millennial generation and create some excitement and have a cool product and they feel like they're building something that's really unique, to me, we found they're really locked in and it's exciting. I think folks love coming here. We have a very family type operation. So if someone comes to you,
a salesperson says, hey, I'm feeling stagnant or maybe, I'm being recruited away, right? I'm being offered 10% more, 25% more. What do you do? Do you try to keep them? Is it a money thing or do people quit managers?
Yeah, I would, I don't, folks will look me up or whatever. Like you'll see, I'm all about zigging when everyone's zagging. Right? I'm a big fan of that. So for me, we have some big tech companies here in South Florida. And so every once in a while, they'll put on a big recruiting effort and all my folks will get pinged. We've had a lot of success. We've grown almost every single month for about 7 years now. It's really, we've been super fortunate. And so I'm really direct. I'll have a staff meeting and I'll bring it up on the whiteboard and be like, hey, here's the company. I know you're all getting called, right? So if you feel like it's better over there, you should go interview, right? To me, I always talk to my people, what are you trying to get done in life? Close your eyes, 5 years from now, what are you doing? Right? And if we're the right spot because you want to build your business career and build your entrepreneurial career and be great at sales, this is a spot for you. And at 27, lead a team of 4 people and, sell multi-million dollars worth of stuff. This is the spot. You want to go work for a big company and being infrastructure and maybe go through a training program and be very organized. I mean, that's the thing for some people. God bless. Go. I live my life. I want to run into somebody in the mall 20 years from now and be like, hey, love you. Thank you so much for what you did for me. Whether that's here, God bless, I hope it is, but it's not for everybody, right? And so, we try to be super open with our folks. And again, if somebody's trying to recruit my folks, I'm like, well, here it is. Here's the good and bad from my perspective. God bless you. You should go interview, right? And if you feel like it's great and the money, it maybe offsets some of the travel and some of the other things, right? Because we all know there's maybe 2% of the people have it all, right? You trace your dreams, the job you love, the money you want. But most of us, there's some give and take. And so I think that's really important to, again, be super open and let your folks kind of pursue their dreams. And I think the more they believe we want the best for them, we can have super honest feedback. So that's really how we try to handle it here.
How do you handle laggards? Do you just get rid of them? Do you try to bolster them? I see a lot of companies typically they'll spend all their time on the underperformers and ignore the high flyers thinking, oh, we'll just get out of their hair and let them just go perform. Yeah. And in reality, what happens is they feel neglected, unloved, right, unappreciated, and they're the ones that leave, and then you're stuck with the laggards.
Yeah, I think it's critically important, without a doubt, the 80-20 rule, make sure your stars feel love, feel recognition, you give them opportunity, they're making the money they want. No doubt you got to, make sure those folks feel locked in and you're super secure with them. And then the laggard piece for me, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I feel like it's communication. Sometimes they're just in the wrong team. They're in the wrong process, right? If they may be great as a closer or a demoer, but if in your developmental process they got to make 100 phone calls a day before they get to be a demoer and they're never going to get there, that's on you as a company, right? You are throwing away somebody that could be great within your company. And so I think the key is communicating all the time. And we all know in sales, I'm sure most sales teams today have a TV or something in their office projection of here's all the stats. So the laggards know they're laggering, right? I mean, you don't have, there had to be you see you're at the bottom of the board every day, so it doesn't have to be that kind of I feel almost demeaning, kind of disrespectful way to treat somebody. But it's engaging those folks and be like, hey, why are we sideways here? And no doubt, I'd say a third of the time they're in the wrong job, right? They're not meant to be in sales. They took the wrong spot, what have you. But the other 2/3 of the time, it's changing the dynamic. Maybe they change teams. Maybe there's another spot in your company. Maybe you insert them into another spot in the sales process, right? But we've been very successful. Unless you hired a knucklehead who's can't handle it intellectually or they don't have the hustle part. But most folks, especially this younger generation, they want to go, man. They see it on the internet. They're like, I want to be a millionaire tomorrow. I don't know how many folks you talk to folks coming out of college today. They're like, I'm ready to retire by the time I'm 30. How do I make that happen? So most of them have the hustle piece, and it's just, where do you direct that energy to make them successful?
Yeah, I hear you. All right, man. Where do we direct our listeners to make them successful, huh?
Fair, totally fair. One thing, in the streamline, when we're going through the 9 ways folks buy, one of the things I mentioned is kind of the streamline, this e-quotes thing. And so I wanted to share with your listeners one thing. So we offer a website totally for free. It's called we're govspend.com, right? You can come get our database. We offer a secondary offering. It's called govquote.us, govquote, QUOTE.us, govquote.us. They can go there. Your folks can sign up. It's free, totally for free. Whatever you sell, sign up. That's a platform that government agencies go to if they're doing a simplified quote. I'm going to buy 10 polycoms tomorrow or this week. I'm going to buy 6 office chairs. I'm going to buy 1,000 pencils. It's an e-marketplace. Government agencies go, they post their quote, and literally you can win a government deal literally in a day or two. I know that sounds crazy. Just go, if you're going to do anything from this podcast, go to govquote.us, register. We're not going to bother you. We're not going to spam you. Just go register. You're there as a vendor. And when a government agency needs what you sell, you'll put in your products, you'll put in your SKUs, that kind of thing, or your codes, and they are buying anything. You'll get notified and you can bid. You'll see some other bids that are going on now. It's live. It's an amazing platform, totally for free. Amazing. You can go to govspend.com if you're interested in our product. I would love that, what have you. But then if you go to govspend.com/top 50, again, govspend.com/top 50, what we'll do, if any of your listeners are a little apprehensive, they're like, I'm not sure, as you mentioned, does the government buy sales consulting? Do they buy leadership consulting? They do, but you don't take my word for it. Go to that website, just put in your name, your phone number, whatever the contact information is. We'll reach out to you without badgering you. I'm not a fan of that at all, right? We'll give you the top 50 government agencies buying what you sell, okay? Totally for free, because we want you to see it. That's how we create long-term value, right? When you win a deal or two very quickly, you'll be amazed. It will take off. And I just want to go back to where we started. The government spends a ton of money, T-O-N, ton. And so the contracts, I was talking to a lady in D.C. the other day, and she was like, you have 60 million, 100 million, blah, 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 doing consulting services. I'm like, oh my goodness. Even the success we have, we're not on that level, right? So it's like amazing. So don't pass up that opportunity. Just go, put in your information. Promise we won't badger you, but it's a chance for you to dip your toe in, see how it works, see if what we're saying is true, and then you can grow it from there.
All right. I'm signing up as we sit here. So put
Awesome.
My money where my mouth is.
Amen,
I got kids to feed, man. I need a contract in a day. You know what I'm saying?
Amen.
And there's your picture right there. Look at that. Very nice.
That's the worst part of the site. So,
but hey, I mean, you were kind enough to make like a little small thumbnail, so it's all good, man.
Amen. That's the marketing people taking over, brother.
Very cool. All right. Well, we will link to both of those, and I will mention it in the post production as well.
Cool.
So, man, that is fantastic. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on, man. This has been great.
Thanks so much. I appreciate everybody staying awake. I know government sales typically is not very exciting, can be somewhat intimidating, but if folks as in sales, it can be literally a game changer. You want to be the hero at your company. It can literally be a game changer for you and your career. Right, do 10% of $30 million, right? And for your company. And so it's a way for you truly to differentiate. Again, even if you do it on your own time, it would have amazing results. The government process is not kind of some of the stereotypes that you've heard over the years. So I encourage you to dip your toe in. I think you will be amazed at some of the results you receive. So thanks for having me on. I totally appreciate it.
Yep, very cool. I appreciate it. All right, Jack, all the way from South Florida. Thanks for coming on the show. 500 federal agencies with 2 million people spending over $4 trillion per year. 90,000 agencies in the state and local spending $3.25 trillion. Man, I'm kind of sad we're that big. Our government's too big. But hey, I digress. If you've listened to this, you know most of my approaches and attitudes and beliefs on politics. So we'll leave that for another time. But like I said, 80% of government spending does not go through the RFP process. So I've been using his software now for a couple of weeks. I like it. I like him. I like his staff. So check out what they're working on. Okay, we link to Jack's personal blog. We link to the GovSpend, GovQuote on the website. He's got a big company, and I like how he was honest right from the beginning. Right, it's his third company, his second good one. If you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to fail. As soon as I finish this up, I'm uploading it and I'm heading to jiu-jitsu. I will fail today, but we do say there is no failure. You either win or you learn, and I do believe that. Yesterday I was rolling with a brown belt, really good guy. He used to tear me up, but he's a lot smaller than me, like significantly, like at least 6 inches shorter, maybe 8 inches shorter. But because he has so much skill, he would just tear me up. But now 2.5 years in, I give him a run for his money. And it's purely on size, right? It's just is. And I was almost going to finish him yesterday for the first time ever on a 6-minute sparring session. And literally with 5 seconds to go, he tapped me because of a mistake I made, a mistake that I know better. But I got amped up trying to win, and I made a mistake and left myself vulnerable. And so, did I fail? Right? I mean, I failed to submit him, but I fought well enough that I did not get submitted for almost 6 minutes. Now, granted, if this was a tournament, I would have lost. I would have won on points, but he would have submitted me during the 6-minute time, the allotted time, so he would have won. But we were training. So I now learned how not to put myself in that vulnerable position. It'll benefit me. All right. So, but are you willing to put yourself out there, right? I'm doing this for 2 hours a day, 5 and 6 days a week. What are you doing in your business to grow like that? And, it's got me thinking. I'm put some info up on the whiteboard just today as I record this outro and intro, but pondering a week-long intensive, but virtual, but live sessions, keep you on track, get you on the right path. So stay tuned. I may have some details around that before the next episode, but I batch these, so we shall see. But good things are coming. More ways to help you, more affordable, more practical, more realistic, things you can put into play immediately. If I do this week-long thing, it'll include a membership in the 30-day sales growth, but still, it may be a month or two before I push this out. So jump into the 30-day sales growth now, 30daysalesgrowth.com. It's super affordable, and I can either credit you back or you're going to get, I think I'm going to do 6 months free in the 30-day sales growth with this new thing I'm noodling. But jump in now, right? Why wait? Start growing. Ask me questions in the group. Join our live calls every Thursday. 30daysalesgrowth.com, or if you want private one-on-one, do my initial process assessment, thesaleswhisperer.com/IPA. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something. 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 Something.